They maneuver into a landing site, out of it, a number of things.
September 1st, 1974. Langenburg, Saskatchewan, Canada. For farmer Edwin Furr, a routine chore turns into one of the most frightening experiences of his life.
Furr observed this object near the ground. He stopped and went over very close to it. And he could see it was metallic looking. It was flat on the bottom. It was domed on top. It was hovering just a foot or so over the ground.
And he's 15 feet in daylight away from an object. No sound. It's spinning, rotating at a very high rate. In the surface of this thing, he said, it had a very old and used up appearance. And in it he could see dark sort of grooves. At the base he could see a sort of wide belt that went around the lower section.
Shocked at what he encounters, Furr slowly retreats back to his tractor, hoping to escape from the object. As he climbs back on, his shock turns to terror when he realizes there is more than just one UFO.
And he could see there were four more, and they were sort of equidistant from each other in a semicircle around the high grass. All same type of objects, same configuration, same color, all rotating.
The ground, or the crop underneath the object, was spun in a spiral. And the plants were rotated and knocked down underneath each one of these.
After hovering in the field for a few minutes, the objects begin their ascent.
The objects ascended silently, vertically, in a step formation. Object 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And as they ascended vertically, silently, he could see beneath each object two vent-like extensions, out of which there came a 6-foot-long plume of gray material.
Shortly after, the objects disappeared. After Furr's encounter, Constable Ronald Morier of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police receives word of the event and visits the Furr property. The physical trace evidence that he discovers puzzles the investigators.
Here were 5 rings, all swirled, compressed in the same direction, all counterclockwise. And the central area in each of the rings was unaffected. The grass was standing up normally. And their sizes ranged from 8 foot in diameter to 11 feet in diameter. And Morier's conclusion, after a full and extensive investigation, impressed me considerably. He said, this really happened, and whatever made these rings came out of the air and left the same way. And that pretty well says it.
More than 3 decades have passed since the event, and multiple field investigations have not produced a single logical explanation. Throughout the 1970s alone, Phillips catalogs more than 400 events similar to the Langenburg case. October 8th, 1978. Cato, Missouri. A grandmother and her grandchild witness a mysterious object in the field that catches their attention.
She could see an oval white something sitting in the field. And I found later that this was about 185 feet from the house. And so she called her husband. He called his son. And it wasn't doing anything. It was just sitting there.
The neat part is they came up with the explanation that it must be a piece of metal that blew in there in a storm. So they didn't say it's a UFO out there. They said, you know, if something's in our field and it shouldn't be there, we got to get it out.
When the father starts his tractor to move the object, something strange occurs.
The object leaps about 10 feet straight up into the air. Reaction. Control. And this thing is only like 4 feet in diameter. And all the people are screaming. And it's hovering there 10 feet above the ground.
The object then begins an ascent away from the property.
Not fast, just kind of cruising. No sound at any time. And the object is rotating. No wings, no engine, no visible means of support. It continues its climb. It makes a definite right turn, which I find later is across the wind. Flies to the right slightly for a few feet. Makes a very strong left turn across the wind. Another right turn and continues to climb.
As the object increases elevation, the witnesses report that it merges with a second, much larger, cylindrical-shaped UFO in the sky.
And the cylinder flies away at a pretty good rate of speed. And so the farmer and his son walked to the spot where the object had been, and they arrived there to find a 4-foot area of dehydrated plants. And the whole site already is turned a very dead, wilted brown.
The physical characteristics left behind by the UFO in Cato makes it a classic trace case. This photograph, taken only a few minutes after the event, proves to Phillips that something unexplained took place on the farm in Cato, and he wants to find out what it was.
The site basically is oval. The grass immediately surrounding it is lush green, perfectly healthy. Not another spot in the entire field that looks like this area. And at the outside edge of the site, near these two little impacted craters, bull nettle plants, which are large-leafed, very tough plants. The leaves were not burned, but they were drawn up tightly, as though some kind of heat generated and they closed up.
To Phillips, this discovery could be evidence of the craft's propulsion disturbing the Earth. But there's an additional scientific anomaly that investigators have yet to explain.
The craters were about 1.25 inches deep in some very hard soil. So I don't know if this occurred on landing or if it occurred on ascent. But no sound was ever heard at any time, indicating any kind of propulsion system. And yet it had to exist for this 4-foot object to cross the wind 3 times.
In the course of Phillips's investigations, trace cases like the Cato event consist mostly of physical effects left behind on the